So in the last class, there was some error in the network error was there. So the internet went for some while. So we have studied till here the per capita income. So this chapter we have done until the per capita income. Now let's proceed further. And we were doing the per capita income. Now, per capita income or the output or the indicator of what it shows you the living standard of the people in a country. Now, how it is obtained per capita income is obtained by dividing the national income by the population of the country. So, in 1867 to 68, for the first time, the Dadabhai Naroji he had ascertained the per capita income in his book, and the name of his book was The Poverty and the Un-British Rule. So remember that. Now, next is your the personal income. So, what do you mean by personal income? So, personal income is the total money in income received by individual and the household of a country from all possible sources before the direct taxes. So, what is that? The keywords here is that the total money, income, total money of the income received by the individual and households of a country from all possible sources. For example, a person can be getting the rent from his premises, he might be getting a salary, he might be doing some business from that, he is getting something, or he might be getting the dividend, he might be getting the interest on his money. So all these will equal to his personal income and before applying the direct taxes. Now next comes is your the disposable income. Now disposable income, what does this mean? This means the actual income which can be spent on the consumption of the individuals and the family. So what is the disposable income? It is the income which can be spent on the consumption किसके द्वारा by the individual and family, thus it can be expressed as DPI. So DPI is equal to the PI minus the direct taxes. Now personal income, if you minus the direct taxes, then here comes as the disposable income, the income in your hand that you can spend. So that is the disposable income. Next comes as the gross domestic product. Now, produced in the country. Now, GDP of the India, it includes only the market value of goods and services which are produced in India. So, for example, the market value of apples produced in the Kashmir are included in our GDP since Kashmir is in India. So the market value of apple produced in the California, even if they are sold in the Indian market, are not included in our GDP because California is not in India. So the only what is produced in a country, that is called as the domestic GDP, is calculated in the GDP. It's a beautiful example. Now, next comes as the produced during a time period. Now, the GDP of a country measures the market value of goods and services that is produced only during this specific time period. The goods and services produced in earlier periods are not included. Specified period is a 1 year time period. Now, in India, GDP is measured both annually and quarterly. So remember this factual knowledge that in India we calculate the GDP both annually and the quarterly. The annual GDP is for the financial year which is from April 1st day 2017 to the March 31st of the 2018. So they have mentioned the date at that which time the book was published. Now, the modern concept of the GDP was first developed by the Simon Kuznets for a US Congress report in the 1934. Now, there are three methods of the calculating the GDP. Now, which you study in the 11th class of the NCRT, 12th class of the NCRT. Now, first comes is your the expenditure method. सबसे पहले आपका आता है expenditure method. Now, in this method, the GDP is measured by how the GDP is measured. GDP is measured by adding the expenditures of all final goods and the service produced in a country. So here, what you are taking the expenditure. कितना खर्चा हो रहा है. So during a specific period or time period, so that is the your expenditure equal to consumption plus the your consumption investment plus government expenditure plus में export minus import. This is the formula for your expenditure method. The other comes is the income approach. Now this methods look at the GDP from the perspective of the earning of the men and the women who are involved in producing the goods and the services. So here what you do, here the earning is calculated. The keyword here is the earning or the income is taken in the care. Now the income approach is measuring the GDP, that is the Y. So wages, rent, interest plus profit all would be your income approach. Then the third comes is your the value added approach. Now, a cup of the tea served to you in a hotel is a final good. Now, the good used to produce it, the tea powder, milk, sugar are intermediate goods. So, you can see this picture tea powder, milk, and the sugar, they are the, for example, the milk cost you 5 rupees. So, tea powder 2 rupees and the sugar 2 rupees, and it is of 10 rupees. So these 9 rupees are there in this 10 rupee. And the 1 rupee who is taking, 1 rupee is taken by the person who is doing the labor, who is producing the this tea. Now, since they form a part of the final good, the cup of the tea. Now, one way to measure the market value of the cup of the tea is to add the value produced by each intermediate good used to produce it. The sum of the value added by all the three intermediate good used in the production give us the total value of the final goods produced in the economy. So what is the value added method? So add the tea powder plus the milk plus sugar equal to tea. Now value of the intermediate good is equal to the value of the final good. जो intermediate good है उसकी value final good के बराबर होनी चाहिए. Now GDP, why it is important? So study of the economic growth. So how the economy is performing. Then problems of the inflation and the deflation that can be tackled. Comparison with the developed countries of the world. And who calculates the GDP for the India? CSO. Central Statistical Office, remember that. Then comes is the estimates the purchasing power. Then the study of the public sector and a guide to the economic planning. Now, what are the limitations of the GDP? So, several important goods and the services are left out of the GDP. The GDP, it includes only the goods and the services sold in the market. The services provided by the parents to their children is very important, but remember that it is not included in the GDP because it is not sold in the market, because it does not have a value. The love of the mother, it does not have a value. Likewise, the clean air, which is vital for the healthy life, has no market value and is left out of the GDP. Now, the similar way, water does not have. But if the water is being cleaned and it has been packed and it has been provided by the companies in the form of the water bottle, then it becomes the value. But the natural thing, the nature has provided us these things are the freely available things. The next comes to the GDP measures only the quantity but not the quality. So remember, it does not measure the quality of the economy. It only measures what is the quantity of the goods produced. The quality does not matter. In 1917, schools and the banks did not permit the use of the ballpoint pens. Now, this is because the ones available in the India were very poor quality. Since then, not only has there been a substantial increase in the quality of the ball pens produced in India, but their quality has also improved a lot. The improvement in the quality of the goods is very important, but it is not captured by the GDP. Next, GDP does not tell us about the way income is distributed in the country. Now, GDP of a country may be growing rapidly, but income may be distributed so unequally. So, for example, there would be few people who have the maximum share in the economy, maximum income in the few hands, and the others they are suffering from the poverty. So, this does not tell about that. The income is distributed in the country so unequally that only a small percentage of the people may benefit from it. Next, the GDP does not tell us about the kind of the life people are living. So, are they happy? Are they prosperous? Are they living in a democratic country or not? A high level of the per capita real GDP can go hand in hand with a very low health condition of the people, undemocratic political system, high pollution, and suicide rate. So, if we have to compare the India with the India's GDP with the China's GDP, so what do you think? Does it an appropriate method? What do you think that the if the China's GDP is higher than the India, so what does it tell you? So do you think that you will only get the quantity of the products produced in the China as compared to the quantity of the goods produced in the India, but you will not get to know about the quality thing because you will not get to know about the labor laws, how harsh are the labor laws, what type of the government there is. Now, are the people happy or not? Are the quality of the goods? You know that the Chinese goods are not qualitative good. Now, estimation of the GDP, the CSO under Ministry of the Statistical Department keeps the record. It its processes involves the conducting the annual survey of the industries and the compilation of the various indexes like the index of the industrial production IIP, consumer price index, etc. Now, next topic it comes is the composition of the GDP. Now, Indian economy is broadly divided into the three sectors which we have studied earlier also in the previous classes. Now, the primary sector, this is the agriculture sector or the allied agriculture and the allied sectors are there. Now, agriculture sector is known as the primary sector. Now, in which the agriculture operations are undertaken, agriculture based allied activities, production of the raw material, such as the cattle farm, fishing, mining, forestry, corn, coal, etc., are undertaken. Secondary sector is the industrial sector. Is the secondary sector in which the goods and commodities are produced by transforming the raw material. Important industries are the iron and the steel industry, cotton, textile, jute, sugar, cement, paper, petrochemical, automobile, and the other small scale. Then comes is the your tertiary service or the service sector. Now, the tertiary sector is known as the service sector, which include the government, scientific research, then the transport, communication, trade, banking, telegraph, banking and education, entertainment, healthcare, and the information and technology. So these we have studied. These are the easy topics. Now, in the 20th century, economics began to suggest that the traditional territory services could be further distinguished from the quaternary and the quinary service sectors. Now, contribution of the different sectors in the GDP of the India. Now, service sector. Now, there was a new news that though the GDP is going down, but the agriculture sector or the food crops, they are performing very well despite of that. Now, service sector is the largest sector in the India. Gross value added at the current price for the service sector is estimated at the 92.26 lakh crore in the 2018-19. Now, these datas they are not our concern because they are the old datas, and the UPSC generally does not ask you these datas, and you cannot learn these. But the thing that you have to know is that the contribution of the agriculture sector in the 1950 was very high. It started decreasing, whereas your this so it is decreasing. Industry sector, its contribution to the GDP was low, so it started rising. Whereas the service sector, it has also risen, though it was at the good place, but it has been improved further more. Now, from the 2017-18 data, what is evident that our industry sector it still lacks. Now, the change have come from the agriculture to the tertiary sector, but the secondary sector has to be improved, and that will help us more. So this data is 2018-19, and that is not important for the our exam point of view. So we are leaving this. So they have shown you a growth chart. So how the growth was there and how frequent was that. Now next comes is that the India is the second largest producer of the agriculture products in the India. Now India accounts for the 7.39% of the total global agricultural output. Now, in the industrial sector, India's world rank is 6, and in the service sector, India's world rank is 8. Now, the contribution of the agriculture sector in the Indian economy is much higher than the world average, that is 6.4%. Now, contribution of the industry service sector is lower than the world average, that is 30% for the industry, and the 63% for the service sector. Now, next comes is the gross value added GVA. Now, what is this? Now, it is the measure of the value of the goods and the services. So, what is that? It is a measure of what? Measure of the value of the goods and services. Now, value of goods and services which are produced. Now, where they are produced? Now, produced in an area, industry, or the sector of the economy. So remember, measure of what? Measure of the value of good service produced. Where they are produced in an area, industry, or the sector of the economy. So GVA equal to GDP plus subsidies minus the direct and sales and the. So GDP में you add कर दो जो भी subsidy मिलती है, for example farm subsidy or the urea subsidy, and so many subsidies are there. So add them and then deduct the taxes, direct tax. Now next comes is the economic growth and the development. Now as per the this is something that your comes is your the for the mains exam. Now as per the economics, Amritya Sen, economic growth is one aspect of the economic development. The United Nations see it like this: the economic development It focuses not only on the immense materialistic need, but it focuses on the overall development or the rise in its living standards. Now, what do you mean by the economic growth? Now, it is a quantitative measure. You have to remember that what is the economic growth? Economic growth is a quantitative. It measures the quantity, which consider the rise in the output produced in an economy or nation in a particular period in its economy in its monetary value. The key parameters of the economic growth in an economy are the GDP, gross national product, which helps in the measuring the actual size of the economy. Now, growth is quantitative, so growth can be measured through the GDP or the GNP. Next comes is the economic development. Now, economic development projects a broader picture of the economy, and development is, remember, it is qualitative. Now, for example, if I say that your UPSC preparation has developed. So from the first day we met. So what I am saying that at what place at the quality level you were there, your quality has improved as prepared as compared to the previous one. Your in terms of the your UPSC preparation. Now an increase in the production level or the output of an economy, along with an improvement in the living standard of the its citizens. Now it focuses more on the socio-economic factors. Now remember what are these socio-economic factors? Go to the polity. Polity, the part 4 of the constitution, it talks about the welfare state. It talks about the your DPSP, and those are in the socio-economic nature. So try to interrelate the things. And if a question comes in the GS mains about the economic development, so do mention these things also of the polity. Now, rather than just quantitative increase in the production, now economic development is a qualitative measure which measures the improvement in technology, labor reforms, rising living standards, and the broader institutional changes in a economy. So, Human Development Index is a tool to measure the real development of the company. So development for development, you need the human development index, whereas the GDP, NNP, and GVA, national income, all these are required for to measure the your the growth of a so this I told you earlier also this topic is very important for your mains. Now next here is the development path based on the GDP and the employment. In the development path of the India, it first undertook the policy of the closed trade. Now, this was to give the thrust to the domestic industries and reduce the dependence on the foreign produce and the companies. Trade interactions with outside world remain limited. Now, this outlook continued till the 1991 and 1991 when the LPG comes. When India finally decided to open its border to free trade, that is the liberalization, then and liberalize its economy by the allowing the foreign companies to enter the Indian economy. A thrust was given to the employment generation under the 5-year plans. This was to make up for the rising population and the lacking jobs to absorb the increased workforce size. Rural development was also given the importance in the India. For important constituent, it was of the Indian landscape. Now, poverty alleviation came as a corollary of the rural development and a part of the development path of the India. Now, India inherited a poverty-stricken economy from the British rule. So, at the time of the British rule, our economy was not good. There was huge poverty. The literacy was very low. The growth was not good. Now, major share in the economy was of agriculture. Whereas if we talk about the same, the British rule after the partition was a heartbreak, or we can say that the partition it led to the our prosperous agricultural land they went to the Pakistan. Our Kandla port it went to the Pakistan. So we were at a lower stage. We were at a loss now, which had destroyed its resources base completely. Now, the public sector was given significant importance. Private companies and the industries were the subject to the stringent regulations and the standards. It was believed that the government was the sole protector of the people. So, at most, who comes forward and the people look at the government that the government will do something. Government will provide us the relief, and that was seen at that time. Now, when you will read the NCRT of the 12th class polity, the first chapter it talks about these principles, the partition, and what were the our goals at that time. Now, India has sustained the rapid growth of the GDP for the most of the last 2 decades, leading to the rising per capita incomes and reduction in the absolute poverty. Now, per capita income has doubled in the 12 years in per capita income, placing the India comes just inside the middle income country category. Now, life expectancy at the birth is 65 years, and 44% of the children are under 5 are malnourished. Now, the literacy rate for the population aged 15 years to the above is 63% as compared to the 71 figure for the lower middle income countries. Now, India has followed a different path of the development from many other countries. Now, here they have given you a division between the economic growth and the economic development. Now, what is the definition of the first? Now, it is a positive quantitative. So, here the keywords are the quantitative change in the output of an economy. It considers the rise in the output of the economy along with the advancement of the human development index, which consider the rise in the living standard, advancement in the technology, and overall happiness index of the nation. Now, concept is that the economic growth is the narrower concept. Economic development is a broader concept and a new concept in the 21st century. Now, quantitative and the qualitative. Now, rise in the parameter like the it is determined by the GDP, the GNP, FDI, FFI. Then here you have the life expectancy rate, infant mortality rate, then the improvement in the literacy rate, infant mortality rate again it has come, then the poverty rate. Now, this is short term, this is long term. Developed nations, developing economies, increase in the national income, increase in the real national income in a certain period of the time, and the continuous progress. It is a automatic progress. So, may not require the support or the aid of the intervention. It is highly dependent on the government intervention as it includes the widespread policy changes. So, without the government intervention, it is not possible. Now, for those people who are aspiring for the 2021, so for those people, I will say that do make your own handwritten notes. So that will help you at the last because you cannot read this book again and again. So if you make the notes out of these, then you would be able to understand these concept more refiner way, and you can ask me doubts also if you have read these things, and do make your own handwritten notes. Now, here comes is the next topic, that is the factors supporting the economic development. A fast growing population of the working age is an important factor. So, what is the important? Fast growing population of working age. So, India is in that group now at this time. So, our Prime Minister's focus is on improving that only. Now, there are these 700 million Indians under the age of the 35, and the demographics look for Indian growth in the next 20 years at least. The India is experiencing demographic transition that has increased the share of the working age population from 58% to the 64% over the last 2 decades. Now, India has a strong legal system and many English language speakers. Now, this has been a key attractive inward investment from the companies such as the specializing in the information technology. Now, India's economy has successfully developed in the highly advanced and the attractive clusters of the business in the technology space. Now, for example, they witnessed the rapid emergence of the Bangalore as the hub for the global the software business. Now, external economies of the scale have dependent their competitive advantages in the many related industries. Now, this is a very important thing about the Human Development Index. Now, in 1990, Mehboob ul Haq, a Pakistani economist at the United Nations, introduced the Human Development Index. Now, Human Development Index, what is it? It is a composite index of the life expectancy at the birth, adult literacy rate, and the standard of the living measured as an algorithm functions of the GDP adjusted to the purchasing power parity. Now, India climbed one spot, that is 130 of the 189 countries in the latest. That is the at that time that the book is written. So this is not our concern. You have to see the latest one, Human Development Index. In the latest Human Development ranking released today by the United Nations Development Programme between 1992 and 2017, India's HDI value increased. So this is a typing mistake also. From 0.427 to 0.640, an increase of the 50%, and the indicator of the country is remarkable. So this is not important because it is not updated. So you have to refer the updated one from the current affairs. Now, next comes is the growth of the GDP and the economic policies. Many economic policies have been framed by the government of the India since independence for increasing the rate of the economic growth and the economic development. The important economic policy first comes is the agriculture, and these you will find in the planning commission also. Agriculture policy, what is that? It is a set of the government decision and the actions relating to the domestic agriculture and the imports of the foreign agriculture products. Now, some overarching themes, they include the risk management and the adjustment, economic stability, natural resources and environment sustainability, research and the development, and the market access for the domestic commodities. Some agriculture policies are the price policy, land reform policy, then the green revolution, irrigation policy, food policy, agricultural labor policy, and the cooperative policy. Now, these things are important for your more for your mains exam. Now, next comes is the industrial policy. Industrial development is very important aspect of an economy. It creates the employment, promotes the research and the development, leads to the modernization, and ultimately makes the economy self-sufficient. In fact, the industrial development even boosts other sectors of the economy like the agricultural sector, new farming technology, and the service sector. It also closely related to the development of the trade. Now, these several industrial policies have been enacted since 1948. Industrial policy on large-scale industries, example textile industry, sugar industry, price policy industry growth. small scale industry policy, and the industrial labor policy. Now, a new economic policy. The new economic policy has undergone the policy in the beginning of the 1990. The new model of the economic reforms is called as the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. These economic reforms had influenced the overall economic growth of the country in a significant manner. Now, next thing is the your gross national happiness. Now, what do you mean by the gross national happiness? Now, the term gross national happiness it was coined by in the 1970 during an interview by the British journalist for the Financial Times at the Bombay airport when the then king of the Bhutan, Jigme Singye Wangchuk, said that the gross national happiness is more important than the gross national product. Now, in 2011, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution that happiness towards a holistic approach to the development, urging the member nation to follow the example of the Bhutan and measure the happiness and well-being and calling happiness as a fundamental human goal. So these four pillars are asked by the UPSC in the exam. So this is from your pre-perspective. Now the four pillars are the sustainable and the equitable socio-economic development, environment conservation, the preservation and the promotion of the culture and the good governance. The nine domain of the GNH are the psychological well-being, health, time use, then the education, cultural diversity, resilience, the community vitality, ecological diversity, and the resilience and the living standards. Now, this was in this chapter, though a big chapter, but important, most important for your exam point of view, because these definitions are very important if we see from the exam point of view. Now, as I'm not well, so to the next chapter we would be doing the tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So there are only four chapters, and we have done one chapter from the 10th class, and now three chapters are left in the economic. Now do revise these things. Now revision is a must. So that was all in this class. Thank you all of you.